was from Campbellsville, Kentucky, born on Long Valley Road in 1940. He was 15 when I was born. There's 6 of us, and you've got the oldest, which is Bobby, and then Joyce is a year behind him, and then Kay's a few years behind them. So you had that first set of families that went off and had kids. And then you had Damon, me, and Timmy that were still at home. We just waited for everybody to come home because they would bring their kids. The Christmas presents were just everywhere. And we stuffed people upstairs in beds and couches, and Mom, she cooked, and parents downstairs trying to get Christmas toys together and hoping y'all were asleep upstairs and not falling down the stairs, which a lot of people did. But it was just wonderful. Yeah, family. Bobby grew up around horses, and my dad, Reeser Miller, he loved his animals. He had a walking horse. Mainly, he loved his saddlebreds, my dad did. That started, I think, the horse business back then and the love of horses that Bobby got. He loved horses. Then later he just went off to school, and after he left, he said he would never return to Campbellsville, and he never did. I guess he just found out that, Lexington was in his heart, and he stayed.
He told me when I first met him he wanted to be called Bob, and I wanted to be called Jim, because Jimmy and Bobby were what we were called when we were children. And we both agreed that we had grown up and ought to have adult names. And I met him when he brought a paint mare to breed to my paint stallion before I ever owned a thoroughbred horse. And he brought a mare over, naturally in the company of some beautiful woman that trusted him to make the decisions for her, because that's what Bobby's great strength was, his trust.
I went to Walmac Farm as a bloodstock manager for Johnny Jones, and Bobby was the farm manager, really the general manager.
He was the man that did everything, the guy that would steady the ship, and a renowned horseman. The way he dressed, the way he acted, the way he was around a horse, you could just tell.
He's just one of the great horsemen that you treasure your conversations and the stories with when you're involved in horses and horse racing.
We got to spend a lot of time together, and we were all real lucky to be there at that time and to have been given that opportunity by Big Johnny, but I think we were equally as lucky to have had somebody like Bobby around to show us the ropes.
He was very meticulous. There was no shortcuts. It's just, this is the way it's done, and that's the way you do it.
Well, he's incredibly knowledgeable, perhaps the most knowledgeable person I've ever met in the horse business. That was certainly his strength, and he was a man of few words, and you better pay attention to all 3 of them if you want to learn anything.
You just knew with Bobby, it was very natural to him. Now, nothing comes without experience and without a lifetime of work, but some people are just intuitive and are horsemen and others are not, and you could just see how comfortable he was around a horse.
He showed us how the business worked, how great horsemanship, obviously, but a lot about just general life.
We were fortunate enough to grow up around men and horsemen like that, which has allowed us to get where we're at.
Bobby was a guy who never wanted anything from anybody. And that's kind of one of the things that made him special. He was always a guy who was going to give you something, either his time, his knowledge, or most importantly, his friendship.
He came out to the farm and we rode together for a couple of years, maybe every 3 weeks as schedule permitted. He'd come, oftentimes he'd bring somebody, if not, he'd come by himself, and we'd ride through the entire farm and showed him what we're doing, and he was just so interested in seeing the farm, and I think respectful that we're restoring a great facility back to its former glory. And it was really neat spending time with him because there was no agenda. We'd ride together side by side and go through the entire farm, and I think we saw every inch of it. We'd take a different trail each ride, and as you do, you start to talk and get to know each other, and that's really that relationship that I had with him was cherished, yes, but it was formed just from riding horses together. We never had dinner together, we didn't take a trip, but we'd be at the farm and see every inch of it. So it was something I always look forward to.
The second thing that distinguished him from most other people in the horse business was a dead honesty. He reeked of honesty.
When he said something to you, he meant it. and you always felt better for talking to him.
He was the genuine article, but he was always genuine. You know, he was one of the few, or possibly only, Kentucky cowboys that I've ever truly met, and he carried himself that way.
His consistency, his demeanor, just the class in which he handled himself and everybody else. Great amount of knowledge, unbelievably patient, observed really well, and a pleasure to work with, but just a better human being to know and befriend.
You know, he just was that guy that you always wanted to be like. That's probably one of the most important things that made him who he was, and we all felt that way about him.
When he went to work at Millennium for Ro Parra, then it was a constant conversation, and in that position, being fortunate enough to work for Ro myself these many years, and as quality of people as you've ever been involved with.
Just his quiet confidence, and really what you saw is what you got. I trusted what he said. I didn't have to ask twice. He told me what he thought, and I took that to the bank. I mean, he was just someone that was trustworthy and who I really relied on for just about every decision we made in our business. Being in Ecuador, South America, my stepfather had the subscription to Time magazine, and I'll never forget the Time magazine issue where there was a picture of Secretariat on the front cover. And I dreamed ever since that I hope to someday own racehorses, thoroughbreds. I bought Millennium Farms here in Lexington back in 1999, and I really struggled for a few years not getting the right people to help me run the farm because I was an absentee owner and I was busy. And somebody referred me to Bobby, and I remember interviewing him at my house. And as I talked to him, I really thought three things about Bobby. He's certainly qualified, number one. Number two, he's old. He was probably about 65 years old at the time. And number three, he doesn't say much. But at the end, I absolutely loved him, and I hired him the next day. And it was just the best decision that I made in the thoroughbred business.
He was just the perfect middle between me and Ro. Ro's business and counting and my emotion. He's just the perfect combination of being older and wiser and being a great horseman himself. Just kept me between the rails,
I always say that the farm's kind of like its own ecosystem, and the horse is the alpha animal there, but to respect nature and to have that environment is very rewarding.
I've been involved in the horse business and the game pretty much my whole life, but I've thought about what it is that ropes us all in. And I think first and foremost, it's the horse. It's always the horse. And my new favorite quarter horse is Bobby Miller's Wonder Horse Bear. So I was very fortunate to be able to take him in. I had just the right environment. So he's got 3 horse crazy girls that take care of him on a regular basis, my daughter being one of them.